Okay, hi everybody, it's Andrew Maguire here. I'm going to be doing a tutorial really on how to edit a female actress's headshots. So firstly I want to thank Bethan Gurr for agreeing to let me do this video of this tutorial about how I've edited her 10 by 8 headshot. So let's get cracking then. So this is the raw image that's that she's decided that she wants me to retouch and edit into a 10 by 8. So as always, the first thing that I always do, and you'll know this if you've seen any of my videos before, we've got to get our 10 by 8 composition. Now if you're editing an actor's headshot, if you're doing it as original, that's wrong, that's incorrect, because when an actor goes to get a 10 by 8 print, you'll see that you'll have a nice white border around the side, or it will chop off some of the top because it needs to be resized properly. So if you can do that when your actress or actor goes to get their prints done, they won't have any problems getting it printed off at the right measurement. So the first thing I'll do is get my composition. So I always just have a little play with it. Let's leave a little bit of headroom, but not too much. Try and get the eyes on the middle third on our rule of thirds on the horizontal thirds. That's where I always aim for, and yeah, I think that's pretty good. So let's jump straight in with the sharpness of the eyes. So if we go up to our brush, let's select a iris enhancer. Let's show the mask overlay, and let's just draw over. I used to ignore the pupil, but now I just draw straight over it because pupils are always black anyway, so they don't really make much difference when you do enhance them. So you can be careful if you want, but it just saves a little bit of time just to go straight over the iris and the pupil, and trying not to select any eyelashes or anything that's, you know, what's the white bit called? I can't think what the white bit of your eye is called. Absolutely, I can't believe I don't know that. That's absolutely horrendous. So let's just take up the clarity, and what we'll do is you'll notice that when I take up the clarity, basically that just increases the grey, increases the mid-tone contrast. So let's really heighten that up, and as well you'll see that looks a little bit darker than where it was. That's just because there's more grey in it. There's more, I think there's more pixels per, it increases the pixels per, what is it, millimetre or something. So let's do that. Let's also pick up the exposure. I normally go to about 0.75. That looks a bit strong, and I'll have a look at this. I'll just zoom back and see how we look. I'll take some of the highlights out, increase the shadows, and maybe the saturation can go up just a touch. And let's have a look how that looks. Okay, that looks a bit too much, doesn't it? So let's pull back on the exposure, leaving the clarity as it is. Let's go back to 63. These are all obviously estimates. Still a bit much. The catch lights are ridiculous. You can practically see the actual reflector in Bethan's eyes there. So let's go to about 0.50, and that looks a lot better. Right, so let's see if I can finish this tutorial with mouse batteries. So before I do that, I'm going to just put my phone on airplane mode so I don't get interrupted. Yes, I've done that. Okay then, so next I'm going to look at blemishes and things around the face that don't want to be there. Now, really important bit of photography is knowing what a blemish is and what how do we say this, a skin mark is, or a mole, a freckle, something that has to stay in a picture, something that you don't Photoshop, inverted commas, out. So we can see here straight away, and pulled focus to just below the chin, to these two areas here. Now, if you look at them closely, they're clearly not blemishes because they're brown in colour, so they're obviously got to stay in. So when Bethan turns up for an audition, if her moles have been taken out, they're going to be asking where they are. So you can't do that. And there's a couple of little red blemishes here on the lips, so let's get rid of those. And let's just, I always like to keep zooming out, and it looks like there's a little bit of, I don't know if it was particularly cold that day, or if the reds were just, if she had sore lips or something. But that just sticks out to me. So I think I just want to try and get rid of the redness in those lips a tad, and I'm not reshaping the lip, I'm just making the lips look a bit more even. It's a little bit angular, that lip, isn't it? Maybe like if I come here, one more, I think. So I'm going to open another brush up, and I'm going to just put a bit of skin tone in there. It should look much better. No, it doesn't, does it? It looks a little bit lopsided. Let's just move that out. Right, I will do this. Sorry, I've just gone quiet for a long time. But I'm just making sure that I absolutely get this right, because I don't want the lips to look uneven, which is a massive no-no, basically. So I think I'm actually going further away from where I want to be here. Let's start that again. Let's just get rid of this. And let's just clone that there. I always set my healing brush to heal. So it lets Lightroom do the hard work for you. And I'm just going to do that again. But I'm just going to use this little bit of the lip here. Yes, that looks much better. Right, sorry about that, Bethan. If you're watching, you might be a bit embarrassed about that, a close-up of your lips. But that looks much better. Right, the next thing we're going to look at doing is moving unwanted blemishes and hair. So let's start with that little bit of hair. So let's let's find where the actual hair is. I think it finishes there, or that's all we can see. So that's what we're going to move. So selecting the healing brush, the spot removal brush. I'm just going to draw. I'm going to do this in thirds. I'm going to draw along that original hairline. I'm going to leave it, and it's going to. The Lightroom 5 is going to tell me the skin it's going to replace. And look at that, it's done a brilliant job. So this saves you opening up Photoshop and doing the same job. So that's one thing I really like about Lightroom 5, is the ability to be able to clone areas. Let me just get rid of that. See, when you're drawing with small brushes, you've got to be really delicate with your brush, making sure that you cloning the right part of the skin. Right, now let's just do this little ear section. This should be fairly easy. It's quite a high contrast area. Have a look. Let's have a look about that. See, that's much better. And let's just get rid of this last little bit here. Get a nice small brush. Careful not to do that freckle, so let's just do it one by one. Okay, right, so that's the hair taken care of. So that looks really good, I think, now. Now, next thing I'm going to do is get rid of those unwanted blemishes, which I started to do on the lip, but I'll just complete that now. So if we again select the spot removal brush, we can zoom into, get rid of those little red areas and clone it with some more, more of your subject's skin tone, which will make it look a lot nicer. Now, I've got a rule really with hair. If it doesn't really protrude into the frame, if it's just a little bit messy like that, a little bit wild, then leave it as it is. But if it's coming into the frame and it's taking away focus from a key part of the frame, then that needs to go. So there's a little bit of hair here that we'll just take care of. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. So if we zoom out, Good, so we've got rid of some hairs. Let's just, I think there's a couple of, maybe some red areas we'll get rid of. There's a little red area here. And one or two here. And you've got to remember to try your best to have a nice balanced skin tone if you are going to be chopping and changing little bits of details like I am here. It's really important to clone from as close as possible to make the skin tone look balanced. I mean, even if we were doing a black and white portrait, that is still very, very much important, because obviously we're not looking at colour in black and white, but we're tones are enhanced, so colour shifts will really, really show up. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a little bit of skin smoothing underneath Bethan's eyes, as I think that the portrait might look a little bit tidier if we just remove some of the clarity from under her eye. Now, I'm not necessarily changing the colour, I'm just smoothing out the contours, if you will. So that's what we're doing there. So that looks a little bit smoother, a bit better, a bit tidier. That's before and after. It's very subtle, haven't really made much of a difference. There's before, there's after. Okay, so that looks really, really good so far. I'm quite pleased with that. Right, now, one thing I'm going to do, just checking the neckline, that looks a bit yellow, doesn't it? But we'll do that at the end, because as you can see, catch lights, which are, if you don't know what catch lights are basically what you can see in a subject's eyes that normally reflect the light source. It's something that really, really brings to life the eye. So if you don't use a catch light, you run the risk of having a little bit of a flat portrait, really. So just bear that in mind. So that's what you can see there. But I mean, obviously, when I did enhance the eyes in the first place, then, sorry, I can't talk and use my mouse at the same time. I've actually forgotten what I was going to say. That's embarrassing. Yeah, when I enhanced the iris in the first place, then you could see that I've obviously brought that, you know, into fruition a little bit more. So there's a lot of things to bear in mind, really, but just don't. You've got to take something on the verge of looking unrealistic or a bit rubbish before you can bring it back, so you know where it should be. I don't want to mess with the shadow, with the highlights here. Maybe if I mess with the shadows, that could look a little bit better. I just want to try and get rid of that line there under the eyes. I might not be able to move this. If I desaturate it, maybe that'll look good. But again, there's a line you just can't cross before it starts to look a little bit manipulated. See, that looks much better already. So if you look at the line underneath the eyes, yeah, I'm a lot happy with that. Now, bear in mind, this is a colour portrait. So what we want to do is make the colours pop a little bit more. So I want to do that by creating a little bit of sort of darkness in the shadows and what you call dodging and burning. I'm sure you probably already know what that is, but this is how I do it. Now, every time you see a shadow, we're just going to enhance it. So I'm going to zoom in there on this little area here, and I'm just going to draw a line, just increasing my brush size. Just going to draw a line just across that shadow until it starts to disappear. And I might make it a bit bigger and fill in this area. And what I'll do is then, I mean, yes, this does look dark. But I'm going to change my brush size, sorry, the exposure rating to a lot more subtle. Let's zoom out and look at that. See, that really just enhances the that side of Bethan's face. But it does look a bit angular, doesn't it? So I'm going to select that same brush. Now, it's remembered my settings there. I'm just going to draw over that line, just so it sort of doesn't look like I've drawn a shadow in. And remember, this isn't lying. This is just manipulating light, which is totally different. So what I like to do is just draw along any heavy shadows, so just we can manipulate, so we can show exactly where the edges of the face are, which sounds ridiculous comment to make, but just by doing that, we can just create more drama when we just drop the shadows a little bit more. So that looks really nice. Now there's a little bit of shadow detail in two places I can see. One would be just above her right eye, so I'll do that again. By zooming out, I'm going to select exactly the same brush as this. And I'm just going to draw over this area here. And it will just give a little something just above her eye, which shows that the light source was perhaps on her left, on our right as we look at it. And I'll just drop the clarity slightly, just to take away any punchiness. Right, now there's another little area of shadow here, just to where this hair is falling. So I'm just going to draw a line here. Zoom out. Now that looks obviously too heavy, so let's take it back towards 0. Good, and let's have a little play with the highlights and the shadows. Let's leave the highlights where they were. The shadows. I'll pull them down slightly. I'm going to take that down towards 0, just to make it a little bit more subtle. Good, right, okay, so we're looking good so far. Now, you might think that this isn't popping enough, so what I love to do, I love to just have a little basic play with the shadows and highlights. Now, normally with a landscapey photo, I'd want this effect, but if you do that with a headshot, you get a HDR effect, which is no good. So if we just put our shadows just above 0, and if you boost the shadows above that, we get a much nicer effect. So let me just show you what we've done. It's where we started. Here's where we are. So it looks really nice now. It looks really cool. Now what I want to do is just add a bit more contrast, just to separate those blacks and the whites. And I'm going to increase the contrast manually by just enhancing the whites and just dropping those blacks. Now you've got to be careful you don't crush your blacks. Don't take them all the way down here. Just take them just so there's a little bit of almost enhanced contrast on that contrast side that you just moved. That will make a really nice little difference. So that's very, very subtle at the moment, but I quite like that so far. Now what I'm going to do now is this is what I like to call sort of backwards saturation, where I hike up the vibrance, but if you pull back on your saturation, you get a nice muted, almost filmic look, sort of a nod to a film camera. This, so you get sort of nice tones, but they're not vivid. So I'm going to pull back on the vibrance slightly and just enhance that saturation. Now one thing that's screaming out, I think, is the colour of Bethan's hair. It looks a little bit dark, so let's dodge her hair and let's select a brush. I'm just going to highlight her hair. Right, now as you can see, not every piece, it looks like Lady Gaga there, right there, isn't she? If you don't enhance, if you don't select every single strand of hair, that's okay. Because if you look at hair like that anyway, hair falls at different angles, so obviously it catches the light differently. So don't worry if you don't select the hair equally. In fact, it will actually have quite a nice effect. Now if we lighten that, well, the lighten actually automatically gives us 0.25 extra exposure. If we boost that ever so slightly to about 38. Now what I want to do is increase the saturation just to bring out the reds in her hair a little bit. So if we go all the way, it actually doesn't look too stupid. So if I'm going to go up to about 50, 47, 45, something around that area, and I think that looks really nice. Now, if I drop the shadow, if I drop the clarity, watch what happens to her hair. Not a lot is the answer. If we boost it, look how ridiculous that looks. But if we drop it, it looks again nice and subtle. So let's drop that clarity. We'll boost the shadows. We'll drop the highlights, just to enhance a bit more clarity and a bit more colour tone. And let's just drop that towards 0 a little bit actually. Done. So let's see what we're looking. Press the wrong button. Press backslash. It's before and after. So it's a very subtle difference we've made, but very necessary changes. Now the last thing that I'm going to do to finish this portrait is a vignette. I love adding vignettes in portraits. I think it's essential. I think it really draws the eye towards the centre of the frame. Not that you'd need to a lot, but you'd be surprised. And I'm just going to press F and have a look at this big screen. And I think that is a really, really good portrait. And what I'm going to do, I've just noticed one thing that I want to do. I just want to smooth over these lines here to the right and left of Bethan's mouth. Just want to smooth over these lines so they're not quite as prominent. Again, we're not lying about them. We know they're there. I'm not getting rid of them. I'm just making them a little less obvious. So let's just have a look how that looks. It might look no good. No, they look like tiger stripes, so let's get rid of that. It was just an idea, but it hasn't really worked. So that's one thing you've got to just think about when you are editing. Does it look good? Does it look stupid? Have I gone too far here? Or do I need to go further? So that is a finished headshot of an actress. This is Bethan Gurr. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and Bethan, I really hope you enjoy your headshots. So thanks very much, everyone. Plenty more tutorials on my channel. Do check me out. Please subscribe. If you've learned anything or if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to me. Give me a comment, and I will see you all soon. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.